roll call. Kress?
Camille. Oh, here.
Campbell?
Here.
Lackey?
Here.
Salazar?
Here.
Michaels?
Here. Okay, petitions or communications oral or written, does anybody have anything they want to talk about?
I'll let you go first, Nancy, if you want to.
No, follow you.
There's just, I know we're gonna go over these, grants that we had today. There was just one that I had heard some feedback on that was, just kind of disturbing as to the process of the way we do the grants. And, one of them is, let's see, I marked it here. I guess they were upset because they weren't picked, but we had disqualified it because they, I think it was the Chamber of Commerce had,
We're gonna review that one, I think.
that's why I said I just kind of just touches on that one.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the one of the things is, it says here is to be a bona fide 501(c)(3), we know that, but to have 3 continuous years of audited financial reports. And to touch on that one, that was the reason why we didn't move that one forward, was because of that, under that guideline that it did not have its financials for the year, or didn't have any at all, which we have them this morning, which is after the grant round has been done. But we had got a little feedback on that was not, I didn't feel it was good to us 6 or 5. I didn't feel that it was, you know, and I just wanted to state that, is that was the reason why that one was not moved forward.
I agree on that, but in the past year, the sitting on the tourism board asking for financials, we have asked many times the chamber to bring in financials, and they never would. So this was just a clear-cut case of another year we thought that they didn't bring in financials. So it's hard. It states right there on the grant request. And
that's, you know, that's something that we want to follow on as a board, as all the guidelines be.
And just like whenever we do it again, I guess what we're gonna do is maybe what would be good, Marty, is for us to get a checklist that goes on the front of the grants like you do, you know, for any packages.
It has it.
This has it. Well, here's the one recommendation.
Check them off.
The one recommendation that I think that we should follow
Yeah.
is anytime we get a grant, that all 5 of us in a work session review it. But prior to that, we do have our minutes. We should have our minutes as to what's going on, and we should have that grant that's gonna be talked about in the work session. And when we all come to the work session, then we all know what's missing from that grant form. And I wanted to touch on the grant form in that sense is it states right in our boards and commissions that we should have all of our board packet 1 or 2 days prior to the meeting. Being that we changed our meeting to Tuesday now, I recommend that we have our board packets by Friday. That way we can go over them, and when we come to a meeting, we actually all know what we're talking about.
That is the thing, because I think that it's gonna kind of follow the same guidelines as council does, and we get all of our stuff by Friday.
Right, and that's my recommendation for that. The other thing I wanted to touch on is, I had talked to Wally one evening, and he asked me about a check, and I told him that we were gonna meet on Wednesday, and we would check with Cheryl as to how the checks were distributed, and when we would be able to cut him a check. He talked to Marty, and he told Marty that I said I would cut him a check on Wednesday, which was not the conversation that Wally and I had. We were gonna find out what the process was. So, form right here, I don't think the rest of you had seen it. It's a breakdown of what everybody got, whether it be minutes from KCRT or KRDO, the amount of money got, and then on the far right-hand side, it has the reason for not being accepted or being accepted, or what the amounts are. I feel when we do the grant round, the board meeting that we approve the grant rounds, that this be filled out and it be given to Flora Pacelli to be put on the next city council meeting, then that way we know when the checks are gonna be cut. You know, we could tell the recipient that to look at 20 to 25 days after it's been approved by this board, and it goes on to city council to be approved for bills to be paid, and then it goes on to the department that cuts the check. That's a recommendation I feel on that one, if you wanna, anybody wants to look at that.
Absolutely.
Those three things this way, I think as we move forward as a board that,
One thing you might remember is periodically, we have, it's like every quarter, an extra week that we
Mhm.
don't have, it's just like you guys don't have a meeting.
Right.
You could put that the 20 or 25,
Right.
4 days, or the next available board meeting.
Right.
Or a council meeting.
and I think that
Now we
needs,
get away from that, say
Right.
like 25 days, and then we follow
And
another extra week.
and I think that needs to be put on every grant form. And Marty and I had talked the other day, and she told me she did do a new grant form. But in addition, I would like what I just said, put in that grant form, that the amount of time after they've been approved by this board, that their check will be cut to them. There's just some recommendations there, and I wrote them down. I don't know if you
Sure,
all
let's go
wanna
through 'em,
follow
yeah.
through them.
Yeah, sure, let's talk about it since it's on the table
The
right now.
the other thing that
Usually
I'd like to
takes-
bring up is over this thing with like Chamber of Commerce, and I think there's one other grant application that was denied for the same reason. You're probably gonna have to consider that as well. That would be my thought.
Well-
The other thing I was thinking about is that the, grant applications, to make sure that whenever they're turned in, that there's a review to make sure that if they're missing an X or a dot or,
Right.
you know, whatever they're missing, is that they're looked at within a few couple of days and sent back to them and said, you are missing X, and if you don't meet these, you're going to probably be disqualified.
Yeah.
So,
Well, my recommendation was that all 5 of us look at them. And then that way, we all have, there's 5 minds working on it to pick that. And that be in a work session, or if Marty wants to send them, tell us that she has one, and send it all to us, then we can all pick it. But I think, a lot of what's happened has fallen on this board, and I believe that we have to have a handle on it, because we had 6 grants that were not approved because of some reason or another. And I think that all 5 of us, because of what's happened to these 6 grants, that we need to look at them and make sure that everything has been fulfilled in them.
you know, when I listened to, when you guys went over the approval,
Uh-huh.
there were some, like I said, other than the 1 or 2 that you're gonna talk about predominantly today, there were some legitimate reasons for denial, you
Mhm.
know. I understood that.
Well, when you do have a grant form, those are the guidelines we're following on, you know, like the Chamber of Commerce, they had two discrepancies. They were told by someone that if they moved downtown, that the tourism board would give them $10,000. Well, we didn't know nothing about that, you know, so,
Well,
For this board-
where did that conversation begin or end? Or who
I
was
don't
it?
know, I think they might have presumed that, I'm not really sure, but I've heard the same thing, you know? And we do appreciate them moving downtown, and Linda's working so hard, that's not a, you know, we do appreciate them moving back downtown.
I just, the things that I touched on today, I just think, I wanna make a correction and I wanna move forward. That's my take on it. I don't know how you all
Yeah.
feel
No,
about any of the things I had talked about.
Absolutely, I feel that way. I guess what I mean by a check sheet is, 1 page over here that says application, this, you
here's a good indicator right there, is that, you know, and these are all the checklists that they have to have.
It shouldn't come to us unless the packet is complete,
Yeah, I
period.
agree.
It
Well,
shouldn't come to us if.
I think we have to have that responsibility, that
It-
we have to look at these, Nancy.
Complete. Completed.
At a work session.
Let me see your checklist, I just wanna see.
It's some things that we do on that checklist too, it's just not all there.
And there may be some more in there too, you know.
It's kind
Well-
of rules and regulations and
Well,
checklist.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
No, go
Nancy.
ahead.
Go ahead, Nancy.
This is all, no, I don't wanna use the word backlash, but it's the way that we now are funded and the way we have to, as a board, use our funds. If the chamber assumed they were going to get funding from tourism, hands down, that's their issue, not ours. There is a grant application that wasn't complete, that's on them. One of the most important parts of our application is that they advertise 50 miles outside of Trinidad to bring visitors for overnight stays. They have no dollars dedicated to that, okay? They have financials here, which we finally got, I don't know where they've been. Do you, Marty?
I got them from Audra this morning. When I spoke to Linda last, she said that she gave them to Audra. I
Okay,
said your application was incomplete because you didn't have financials. So
Okay.
she said I gave those to Audra. So this, in
So-
conversation with Sai, she asked if I could get those this morning.
okay, so to continue on in that vein, we still do not have expenses. All we have are payroll expenses. We do not know what's their rent, what's their utilities, the supplies, event expenses. They said they
spent on
spent
advertising last year.
$8,000 isn't on here.
I have what they advertised last year,
Well, it
But we
says
don't have on the
$8,000.
financial.
but they sent us,
What I'm saying, Tom,
I understand.
is that the only expense or liability they're showing is payroll,
Right.
but it's not complete.
Mhm.
It's the same issue that was with the other applicant, the Mitchell Museum, for getting doctored financials, if you wanna be real truthful about it. They show expenses of $90,000, but when you add up the expenses they show, it's maybe like 25. Well, where's the other 60? So this is a learning experience for grant applicants as they come forward.
And us.
They have to understand, this is a business transaction. It is not a welfare check.
The one thing that we did get with their grant form was the amount of money that they did in advertising. The amount of money that they did in advertising, I don't know if you all looked at the.
Yeah, I got it right here.
They did $3,002 with KCRT, and they did $1,130 with the Chronicle News. That was the amount of advertising that they did for their festival for 2018. Was those two line items right there. They didn't do with anyone else, just those two. So that's,
So, since the review of grants is next and we're still on
Right.
petitions and
You know, I was
communications.
just looking at these guidelines, and one thing that I see is totally missing, is you guys should have, yeah, you have guidelines, but I think you should have a list of the 4 or 5 items that are actual
Right.
submittals.
Mhm.
Right, that's what I mean on
Yes.
the front,
They
we
need
should have a
to have,
checklist.
you should have in this submittals and the line item that. Is that the only thing that they're required?
Only three.
Okay, what I would recommend is that would be put on in big, maybe a separate sheet, even though there's 3, and then a sideline where they, initial, that they make sure that they see that and put an initial behind each item. To make sure that
So
that's.
maybe with your input there, with your thought there of what you were saying about guidelines, maybe before we even do, before we review the grants, in a work session, we all make sure everybody's paperwork's even right.
right, and a checklist like Phil, Mr. Rico says, that we have a checklist of the things that we're looking for the financials and other important things that
On the bottom of that
need,
sheet,
right.
it shows there's 3 items.
Right.
It's so small, it's at the bottom of the page that it could be missed.
Right.
So that's why I say put it on a
And
separate
things,
sheet.
things that we're looking for, to move the process forward.
And I guess just from the grants that I've been involved in, they usually have the front page that has a checked off list to it, you know.
I think part of our grant thing, I think we're kind of missing some of it too, is like, I think 2 things that should be on there that's very important is they should put, are they getting funded by the city? So they're not double dipping, which we don't ever know that. We have no idea if the city's giving them 10,000, we're giving them 10,000.
Well, that's what John Barkley told me Friday night, that they were promised 10,000 by the city if they moved downtown.
Yeah. And I think the second thing is, have you been funded, what did you get funded last year? Like, say they've gotten funded 10,000 last year, do they already automatically, when they fund that grant, or they're putting in that grant, they already think they're gonna get that 10,000 this year? So I think we need to kinda put in our grant form first, like, are they getting something money from the city, you know, and then how much? We need to know that, cause
Well-
we're the same thing, we're part of the city, but like.
Maybe on that front
that
page
is-
checklist, it could have, right after the front page checklist.
That
right
is
here.
true, cause like I said, when you guys came up and gave you a good example of the Blues Fest.
Blues Fest, yeah.
You know, and when I came up, you know, I did mention how much the city was giving.
But we don't know that. We have no
Right.
idea what we're getting. So they could be like to say, I think we'd look really funny if the city gave them 30,000 and then we gave them another 35 on top. We gave them more than what we even had.
Well,
And we had
again,
no idea we're doing that.
The one thing on that note is ours is just for advertising.
Mhm.
The cities is for operational, pretty much. Ours has a guideline, theirs doesn't, theirs is wide.
There's,
When, I know I'm sit on the board of the Blues, but when you look at beds and heads and 5,000 people in a community, you look at your return, what it is to the city. The city's general fund is based on sales tax. So you take 5,000 people in a community and how much money they dropped by the time they leave, whether it be the convenience stores, the motels, the gas. This is
I
the
did do a
restaurants,
spreadsheet on that, and I turned it in with the recommendation
Hot
letter to the
shots.
city.
you know, and every business that's associated on that weekend with the Blues. Those are the kind of events that the city should want more than anything. Just like this, Chiefs, Comic and Chiefs, I think it's in its first year, but what it could be built up to be is something
Signature
else.
events.
Yes,
It's a
and,
signature
and,
event.
and when you have, I don't know if the city's ever broke down, Phil, as to what the Blues Fest actually leaves in Trinidad after it's done.
It's pretty hard to tell because we don't know, like, like you mentioned, from the
Right.
convenience stores,
You
you
know.
know, the diners.
It gets pretty crazy, if you think about that, they stay a minimum of 2 nights and your hotel rooms minimally are $150 a night during that period of time, that's $300 if you consider that they go out 2 or 3 places to eat or drink, a minimum in that 2 or 3 day period. You find out that they probably each are spending around $500 a person, and you take that times
Minimum,
5,000 people, it gets real dizzy in how much revenue gets made off of
I mean, the easiest probably way to do it is just pull up your sales tax for that month. You can compare sales tax, 'cause that's what generates.
Right.
So you can pull that up and really see a boost of income or not income, you know. on
Well, and just from a hotel point of view, since we've had the Blues Fest here so many years, and there was years that we didn't have it, the years that we didn't have it, you could tell the impact in all the hotels in town because of that, 2 to 4 day period, depending on what people
All
were.
you can do is get an average because it can
Yeah.
vary from year to year.
Yeah.
We can get some averages now.
The one thing about the motel stand of it, Texas is pretty much already in school when the Blues Fest comes on. The people in the motels, I don't know if you correct me or not, Si, but if the people that are staying are actually coming to the fest.
Oh, absolutely, there's no
You
doubt
know.
about that, no, there's no doubt.
That's what I have to say on communication.
On communications with, I mean, what you're saying though too is I think going back on the bicycle fest, I talked to Wally on Saturday night, it's a pretty late conversation, but I don't know if you guys noticed, is they were supposed to have those little, bicycle buggy things going around town. And I asked him, I was like, well, I didn't see him, I didn't see no bicycles, doing that, or people traveling from, when we originally talked about that, was going from bar to bar, hauling people. And he goes, and it was kind of just, I was like, where were they? How come they weren't there? And what he said, he goes,
Were they from out of town, Joey?
yeah, he goes, I had to cancel them because I needed to pay them and I didn't have that money available.
Right.
So I think if we do a grant, I think Wally was misinformed. I don't think that we even knew the process of it. I think when we approved it, I think he thought that we were gonna give him $10,000 right away.
Right. Well, his mother covered he told me Saturday that his mother had to cover expenses for him because of the way we fund.
Yeah.
Now, I wanna go back to a cover sheet question on their application. Description of other funding sources, it says marijuana sales tax. Well, does that come from the city directly as another source, including donations? But on their, I am a stickler for financials. I believe that if they have other funding sources, that it should show. I think that a lot of organizations don't understand what goes into a financial statement. What are their accounts receivable for $12,765? That might be a question I'd like to ask. I don't care about their computer assets or depreciation of their computer or their equipment or their payroll liabilities. I want to know how much money do they have coming in, what are other grant funding sources that they have coming in, what kind of membership donations do they have. The Chamber of Commerce is here not as an art and culture committee. They're here to promote downtown businesses, but they've kind of lost their way in what a Chamber of Commerce is supposed to do. They rarely, if ever, have chamber membership drives. That is an issue. I think they've become very reliant on funding from tourism and very reliant on the city funding. And a lot of the weaning, as I understand from council, that the city council is doing is they're pulling back on their funding, which is trying to make other boards and committees self-sustainable, unless I missed that point. But $150,000 is all that the city is doing for all boards. So that says to everyone, figure out a way to make yourself healthy financially. But it's an education process that these boards have to go through, and that we can't keep going back and having meetings and amending our processes because they didn't have their package together in the beginning.
I agree with that.
It's completely plain right here. Description of other funding sources, marijuana sales taxes, including donations. Okay? But they're not advertising outside of Trinidad to bring tourists in. That is a conflict. And that is one thing that is on our scoring sheet that we did at the final summation of our points. How many outside tourists will be coming? In the past, the Santa Fe Trail Days has always been set up for locals, but locals don't stay in hotels. Locals go to an event and then locals go home. That doesn't help their financial sustainability. That's what we've got to get across to some of these groups. I personally think that the grant application cycle that we went through was pretty efficient. We gave it a lot of effort, we put in a lot of thought, and we had a lot of discussions. And the 3 or 4 that did not get funding, it's clear why they didn't. Lack of history, lack of budgets, lack of their input, lack of knowledge.
One of the things I will say this is, all 5 of us, Mr. Rico, we all came in after we had reviewed all of these grants, and we all were in the same place. You were at that meeting. We were all in the same place when it came to making the decisions on all of these. It's not that there was no argument with anything. It was we had went over them. The one thing I'd like to say to you is that I haven't been in business for a while, but all 5 of us are business people. And we do look at everything in a sense of a checks and balance list. We all talk on that subject, where the money's going. We're all looking out for the city's money in the best places to put it that are gonna be beneficial to Trinidad. We all do want you to understand that, you know. One comment that came out of someone from city council was, why did we give the Blues so much money and this one didn't get nothing, the chamber didn't get nothing? Well, what I'd like to touch on that is, all of our meetings are open. And any city council member can come to these meetings and hear what we have to say and the way we look at things. But we're honest business people and we just wanna make the right decisions for the city of Trinidad. That's the way I feel about all 5 of us.
We have a budget.
We have a budget, and from a state tourism point of view, the one thing that they drill into us and the leadership in the state right now is you have to develop signature events.
Right.
Because they carry your name throughout the whole year, like at this comedy festival, just gets better and better.
Right.
Is you really need to develop signature events.
My wife did a yoga class last week and there was a couple from California. They bought property here because they were at the Blues Fest. They came to Trinidad to see the Blues Fest 2 years ago and they bought property here because of that. And that's, you know,
That's significant when you see things like that.
when you and we don't hear a lot of that. But
Well, it's kind of like when Angel Fire does their balloon fest. All year long, if you're thinking about a balloon fest, you're thinking about Albuquerque or Angel Fire to go to, you know? So it's really important to develop signature events. People end up.
Well, one of the comments too about the Santa Fe Trail Days that has always bothered me is that it's not about bouncy houses. It should be about our heritage and our history. It should be about teaching moments as well as being fun. I personally think that one of the things that the chamber needs to think about doing is how to make it more relevant to our region. I will be honest and say I scored it down on that because it didn't meet my expectations, and one of the points, the event represents a good platform for further development as a tourism or destination event. It does not meet that expectation.
Well, one of the things I think you guys need to look at too, when you see some things like you just mentioned there, I think it would behoove you, being that you've identified that, to go to their meeting and inform them of what your thoughts are. I think that would be a good thing for you to do, and maybe as a representation to other tourism.
Well, I think it's a good communication point to make, Mayor. I do believe though that they need to come to us and ask, because if we go to every board that's denied, that's all we'll do.
And sometimes what we've been able to do, which really helps educate what we may see for an event, is we may be able to make a motion or have in the past that says something like, we will spend up to $1,500 on advertising and marketing that goes beyond 50 miles. So we teach them not only to advertise locally, but to advertise beyond 50 miles. Or you could make a motion in the regards of, we would support an event that was up to $1,000 that would be advertised with that thing for something that had to do with a historical event for Santa Fe Trail Festival. So you educate them, so you give them the money, but you teach them what the money should be for only.
Right.
And then it helps because you bring people in. So
And
that's just.
on that question, Santa Fe Trail wanted $10,000. If they spent $3,000 last year,
well, they
what are
spent,
they doing with that?
8,000.
they spent 4,000, they spent
4,000.
4,130 on advertising.
And,
So,
but that, a lot of that was local.
that, a lot of that was
Which is-
local, but,
right.
so where are they going with
Here's-
the 10,000?
Here's one thing I'd like to touch on, Phil, is, the young lady that has the history museum, what's her name?
Kirby's.
Kirby Scopes talked, last week at the junior college, and she said that Main Street is part of Santa Fe Trail, part of the center. This year, it's 200 years old. the chamber should have been building on that for an entire year.
Correct.
That it's 200 years old, the Santa Fe Trail Festival is gonna be moved downtown. Did you hear that, Phil?
But
That,
one thing,
I heard that way back.
yeah, but
But see, it's 200 years old this year, the Santa Fe Trail, which goes right down Main Street. And that's what the chamber should have built on all year long. I would have got behind them as advertising outside of Trinidad for
we could
vendors.
still do that by a motion if we wanted to, just this is work session, we're thinking about by doing something like, we will spend up to X amount of dollars outside of 50 miles by advertising an ad that shows that it's 200-year-old,
But,
That's-
you know.
Madam Chairman, what are their activities?
Yeah.
What, they still are falling short in a lack of planning. They wanna have it at the end of June, we're in May, but they haven't planned, as Tom was saying, for a 200-year history extravaganza for Santa Fe Trail. Even if we gave them $2,500, I don't know that they can put together a celebration of that event. I didn't know it was a 200-year
We
anniversary.
could
No,
challenge
so-
them to it, and then they wouldn't have the money, I mean, you know what I
I
mean?
mean, it should have been
So-
built on for a whole
No, I
year.
agree with both you guys, I'm just trying to make it,
200
I'm trying
I
to
just-
educate.
I think though, like, I mean, all of us as a board member, I think we all made a good decision, I think we made the right decision on a lot of the ones that were denied for the right reason.
Mhm.
What I don't like is, just because we deny someone, they can't come back to one of us as board members. I mean, it's the same thing like this weekend, I'm super busy, I'm getting approached by SCRT, want me to go to their meeting to know why we denied them, and I'm like, why would I have to go? I don't,
Right,
like,
well, same thing happened to me.
it shouldn't be like that. I think if they don't fill out their paperwork right, they can't go around our board to go
To city
to
officials.
city officials and then come back a backlash to us, now we're talking about it again. Step
Exactly.
one is, they didn't have their paperwork filled out during the grant process. We denied them. We can't go back and be like, oh, now we can open it up again,
It's not fair to
because
the
it's
other
not
ones.
fair for the other ones to
Right,
come
right,
through.
right,
If they
right,
don't have
right.
it turned in,
Right.
and I think on the first thing is if, it should go through Marty or someone else. If that paperwork's not filled out, it should never go in front of us at all. We shouldn't even be going through those 16 or
Well-
15 if it's not, if they don't have the proper paperwork turned in,
That's-
why are we even
Or
discussing
Joey,
it?
it should come before us so we can see.
That's why,
We
that's,
need to see every
that's what I
applicant.
recommend, Joey, that.
Or if that's the case, then, but we can't go through all these and then deny them, and then let's talk about them
Let's not
again.
get it.
Cause we're never gonna move forward as a
Yeah,
board if
no,
we're gonna
you're
keep
right,
talking about the
right,
same
right,
one.
right. And the other reason-
The sad thing about having 13 applications and revoking 6 of them because of not being complete, that's pretty sad,
Well,
Well,
you know.
and this is a
it's
perfect
crazy.
example, I mean, so if we'd have had this as a, and I look at this as a business owner
mhm.
and events that we do. If we'd have had this cash and profit loss that they turned in during the grant round, if we're all business people and I'm looking at it and I see Santa Fe Trail Festival, 2013, 15,000, 2014, 360,000, 27,000, 2016, 34,000, 2017, 30,000, and 2018, 25,000. What I see right here is a decline
Yes.
in what they're doing. So this isn't a very good event, cause you can see, they've only had one good year that's
Right.
been successful. Last year, they collected $14,509 in donations, but then they were also down $5,000 in revenue.
Right. That's
So
my-
to me,
that's
it's showing that it's not a successful event, that
That's
it's
my
not a
point.
profitable
It's-
event, and it's not helping the city of Trinidad.
It's not about bouncy houses.
It's not, yeah, it's like what Tom said, it's about, we have a 200-year Santa Fe Trail thing, and they're not even advertising for the Santa Fe
When
Trail.
you think how significant that is
Yeah,
for
that's
this part of the
huge,
country.
that is huge.
You know,
It's
you
huge.
think the History Museum should have been
Involved.
pulled on board.
Yeah.
The Mitchell should have been pulled on board. I mean,
But it's an argument to even have them down at down here. They were still wanting to have it down at the park, the
Correct.
same part of Santa Fe Trail.
Correct. I want to just interject something here. I suggested this at the last meeting and I'm gonna bring it up again. We need an incubation training session for every board that wants to submit an application for grant funding prior to the opening of the next funding cycle, which we are currently in. A chairman, an executive director, someone from the board needs to come before us. We need to hold a public meeting saying, this is what you need to do and why.
Mhm.
If you don't receive funding, this is why. If you have a project, as we had 3 that were denied because of, lack of, history. The historic home tours, which I'm in favor of. The Terrapist, they didn't have a history. Music and lyrics, they just don't have a history. They have to be able to start creating something within their board, their group, that allows them to show everything that's required. And they also need to show what their income is, what their expenses are. One particular question came to me from, I'll say Wally. He came to us and asked, what should I do? He said, he wanted to have the green room experience for the comedians at the Mitchell. The Mitchell's elevator doesn't work. Costs $1,100 to get it fixed. And I said, that's ridiculous. It's a public building, elevator needs to be fixed, I'm sure they have $1,100. Did it get fixed? No. But it's stuff like that, it's comments like that.
They could have done it by just pulling up on First Street there, or Second Street, you know, with the back door where they used to have the
They
black
wanted
box.
to go upstairs.
Yeah, so on the backside, they could have done that, that's a
Well, the director didn't give him that advice.
They're still not, accessible to handicap through the back.
That's right,
either,
that's
to the
right.
steps.
Oh, I
So
thought
they-
they put it on because Gold Taverns there and they put a
Oh,
slide
maybe they
back there
did.
so that you could go up. So, yeah.
Can I
it's
make
just-
another comment too, and I think you know, 3 of these grant proposals that we denied, each one of them had in there that they wanted to do $7,000 with KRDO. That was $21,000 on top of the $19,000 we gave them, if they would all got their money.
Mm-hmm.
They would have got, the KRDO would have got close to $40,000 on these events. So, you know, we need to realize that we paid KRDO so we could go out and advertise for these people.
Right.
Because that was a lot of money that these, Mitchell was one of them, they wanted $7,000 to advertise KRDO. And we
Yeah.
gave KRDO $19,000 so we could go out and advertise for them.
So,
And that was
And on that note, real quick on KRDO, so me and Marty met with, Connie with KRDO on Friday.
Mhm.
So, and I wasn't aware of this either, so the way it works is I know that we gave some advertising out on these grants. It can't work like that, we only get 3, is that what it was? It was 3, like we could advertise 3 times, you know, on their board or whatever it is. It's not really ads, so I mean, I think even as a board, that much money that we spent, I mean, looking back at it, I don't know if I had even approved that much. Cause what I see happening is, it's 3 boards that you get on their front homepage, and then it's a bunch of things on their website, you know, that you get. So I don't know if the bang for the buck is really, is worth it there. And I think like, there's gonna be 2 recordings, right, Marty, for, the mayor, or 3, that we're gonna have to set up with you, Bill, to go up there, but I just don't think, you know, for that much money.
One is with Phil and 2 are down here.
Yeah, so the way we put it on there is we did the biggest 3 events, is we're gonna do Blues Fest, it was Artocade, and I think we're gonna do a spotlight with the businesses in town.
So next year, when KRD approaches us, that's what we want. We need to look at another avenue as to the way, so that way it'll be brought into our grant form. This way, we know what we're giving the money for,
Yeah.
that we are actually buying some ads for the people that we grant.
Cause it looked like, you know, in our sheet that we got, remember, like 2
This
meetings
right
ago? Yeah, it looked like we had all these ads available.
Yeah.
But the
and
way it
that's-
comes across, it's not like that.
That's the way I
That's the way I looked at it too. So, you know, it shows we have, you know, 30 or 40
Did you
times a
see
month,
this?
or no, that's not the way it's going, it's really one ad,
Mhm.
showing 30 or 40 times.
Well, I wanna get back to your.
Which you can
comment
change 3.
Just a moment ago. When they have the monthly boards and commissions meeting with the chairs, is somebody going to that?
Yeah, I've been
They're
going.
And I think at the first of the year, and periodically, whenever there's an event coming up, and you're going to have a round of grants, prior to that meeting, so that maybe there could be a collaboration of, so that you're talking about the amount that was going to KRDO, and then you guys are doing KRDO. and try to find out who's doing what marketing. And that way you guys can maybe collaborate together to
Right.
spend instead of 50 or
Well-
60,000, maybe
I-
narrow that down to whatever.
After
Right.
listening to Joey, we have to look at a whole new way that we
Whole new way
do
to-
buy our stuff
It
from
was
KRDO.
huge eye-opening, I don't think like,
You know, and some of these new groups, they wanted KRDO to the bang of the buck, and not to defend the blues for anything, but it took them 10, 13 years to get onto that that TV station. They worked from the ground up and walked, and they just wanna go in with the big bang right away. I don't know if that's, you know, feasible or
Well,
not, but.
Well, but to that point, Camilla, you have to expand the type of events that we have. And today, it's all about social media.
Oh, I agree with that,
So you have to give the startups a pass, because advertising and marketing is so different today than it was.
Well, I
Blues
agree
Fest
with
days.
that, I do agree with that,
But Chairman, or Mayor Rico, I think that, since we're halfway through this grant cycle, and Marty, I don't know, have we had new, okay,
No,
so,
I haven't put it out yet until the grant application is revised.
okay, I think that should go out ASAP.
June first is when the next cycle
Okay.
begins.
But a review of the cover page is what I'm talking about. We need to have a work session just on that. Secondly, there needs to be a work session in inviting all boards and executive director representatives to come to a work session so they can be educated, and we can have a question and answer session on an example of why an application will be denied, or what is a complete application. Just the city council, when someone has a question of council, they go to council. Council people don't go to them and say, this is what you need to do. Number one, it's not open records, correct, right? For talking about funding or what you need to do, you know, you come to council to get
Anything
your
like that,
questions.
the only thing that's not open records is our executive sessions, everything else is.
That's exactly right, but my point is, council does not go to somebody and say, you have a question on this, I can help you with what to do. No, they come to council.
What we do is if there's, somebody comes up with a question, I tell them to come in front of council.
Exactly, and that's what should happen here. If somebody from a declined applicant, goes to a city staff person and says, well, they denied us, won't you help us fix this? You need to send them to us. Cause it's
That's a
basically our
good
funding.
point. That's a good point, you know, because as everyone on this board got, we got a lot of slack from people,
yeah.
that there was power being put on us, and we really didn't wanna be mean. I know from the bottom of our hearts.
So is that something that we put on, or is that something that, Mayor, you know, like, can you put together all the boards, you know, like?
No, we
city
do
council,
it.
or is that
We do
something
it.
we put on?
We do it.
No, yeah.
To meet with all the boards?
They come to us, we
You
can
know,
advertise it.
and you know, to follow up with what you're talking about, you know, getting these people, send out to all the board available
Mhm.
boards and commissions or wherever out there, kind of a.
It's a teaching moment.
Well, what I'm talking about is have them send in maybe a possibility of like a letter of intent to,
But
they
that's
wanna
just
do-
another
they-
layer of paperwork.
Well, I'm just trying to figure, I'm just throwing this out there, so that they could be here, so that they could get educated.
Well, they can get, we have all their emails, right, Marty? So we can email them an invitation.
Yeah, send them an invitation
Mhm.
that they would like to,
That this work session is specifically for educating the public, or those groups and boards and their directors, on grant application.
and I would send that out prior to each cycle.
Me too, I agree with you too.
I think maybe anybody who plans on applying for a grant in the year 2019 and then December have it, then that way, anybody in the fund next year that is applying for that grant, the meeting is pretty much mandatory for you to come to understand what the grant process is
Right.
about.
And I think that
And
the public may be confused, because we are a city board that is funded by lodging taxes, that they think maybe we fall under the guise of city council's funding, and we're totally separate. And that needs to be explained very clearly. That's our independent budget.
Yeah.
Morty,
How many
do you have
grant
a
cycles
copy
do you
of the
guys have?
new
every quarter.
Grant form?
No, I
The
think
one
it's
that I
really,
told you
I
I
think
put
what Nancy's
together
saying
now.
is really
No.
important, to, to talk about, you know, look at your event, think of how you're bringing rooms into the area, cause that's how we make money to spend as a board. So your event has to be an event where people would spend the night and go downtown, and to educate them so they put on better events, and
And another thing about putting it that way is you may weed some of them out.
Right.
That they don't qualify, their organization's not gonna qualify for that particular thing because it may be more of a city than it is, an outlying area,
Do you think that it would be over too much to have them come each quarter, or would be maybe
I
like?
think
you
one
said,
time a year.
One time a year, or
Yeah.
semi-annually at the most?
That's what I think. I don't
Well,
know.
I think this is a teaching time,
Mhm.
and I think it may be that we have to go every quarter for the first year of
Yeah,
these
you're right.
cycles.
I think you're right, Nancy. I
Uh,
think once every 6 months they don't get educated
No,
enough.
and not everybody can come at that time. If I were the chamber, I would say, okay, chamber board, we got denied, and there's a huge anniversary coming up. Let's go back and reapply and do it in the fall and have more time to put this together for our heritage
Mhm.
focus, rather than a traditional Santa Fe Trail Days that we've been doing. And I still want a revised, financial.
So just so that we clean this up and move forward, before we finish off the review of the grants, they're under petitions or communications, oral or written, is there anything else anybody wants to talk about?
One other thing, and this is gonna go on the grant form, is
Oh, it's under
have,
grants.
have you done business with the city before? And I think this is mandatory that this be on the grant form.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Have you done business with this, what was the outcome? And did you and the city
Were there complications?
fulfill, was the fulfillment on both ends of it?
Is there
Yeah, it's a good
This,
point.
this was another thing with, Juan and this dirt series. We got a letter one morning and we had to back off of that one. Well, I'm still kind of upset about that deal because I never got an explanation from you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Sund as to the letter. You know, so all the things that you do here, we never really got a clear explanation of the denial of it. You know, just bits and pieces. And I think from all the things that you've seen now that we've presented today, we get a lot of bad publicity and feedback, this board, just in this one grant cycle. We've gotten beat up, you know, and 99% of it is just hearsay. We have never gotten a clear explanation on a lot of things.
I want to
And
add,
that's the thing that upsets me the most.
I want to add too, Tom, and I agree that the way that that letter was handled with one, it caught everybody off guard. There was no defense. He was tried, convicted, and not done. It was not part of our packet. We didn't have any knowledge of this letter coming. I have encouraged Mr. Della Rocca to come back and reapply. He had people down here from the state over the weekend, taking him out onto, many of the trails that he is, taking his bikers on. They are down here specifically for these biking events. They were here for 2 days. The issue between Mr. Della Rocca and Mr. Sun has history with Jonathan. Jonathan is gone. We need to move on. And I believe that, in all fairness, we need to have Mr. Della Rocca come back.
And I think it goes a little bit further, I think it's the same thing with SCRT. You know, the same thing happened with SCRT, is they were supposed to fulfill a contract with what the city
right.
did, and then we were told, you know, that they didn't fulfill it. You
The
know, that's another-
$9,000.
Yeah, that was another one too, I think that, you know, we need to clarify all as well.
Right, I agree. If we're going to be giving public funding and the transparency behind the funding and the giving of the funds, we have to be held as accountable as any elected board that doles out public funds and why it's denied or why it's given or isn't given. I think that as business owners, we've all put a lot of good thought and passed our work experience into these applications. This was not done lightly. You and I, Jody, we're in the restaurant business. If we don't get our food order in, we don't get our food.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get your order in, you don't get your stuff. If you didn't get the UPS stuff done right, you had a problem. Same with hotel. We all bring that level of experience, of performance and transparency to the board. So I think this board is going to do well.
Yeah, I think it's a really strong board. I think we all have an open mind. I think we have our own mind. I think that's what makes it so good. I think if we can get the city figured out as far as our grant process, I think we're gonna be a better board too. I think that the grant process will be a lot better. Cause I think we're missing some pieces on our grant form,
Yeah.
big time,
I
to
agree.
decide on how really to process this money.
I think the one thing about going forward with the grant form is, the things that I recommend that we put on there, I'm gonna give them to Marty. And
Do you
then,
have copies of that, Tom?
I don't.
I've been writing notes
Can
down.
you,
Okay.
can you make us a copy of?
Well, what my suggestion was, is if anybody else has anything that needs to go on this grant
Right.
form, that they write it down, we give it to Marty, and she just kinda gives us a
A
worksheet
template.
Mhm.
to go off of, and then we could, by June first, when it starts, then by this week, we could probably all get it together and.
Yeah.
Will there be a May 14th meeting and I can give it to you then?
Who won't be here on May 14th?
But I trust my,
But if you could send it to them, email.
Yeah, we could look at email.
yeah.
I won't be here
I would
May
like-
14th or the end of May either.
If I could get a copy, then we're not duplicating, but we can
Okay,
add on to.
I'll write what I had and make some copies of it.
That'd be helpful.
And then we can move forward with the grant form, and then I guess I'm done, I've spilled enough.
Sure. And does anybody have any other, besides grants, any other petitions or communications that you would want to talk about? Okay,
I have one more.
and then I'll close this meeting and we'll go into us.
Oh, real quick, with tourism, cause we are doing tourism, I still think, like, I know, we've discussed this in the past a little bit, don't you think we should create something? I know that the biggest picture that gets taken for Colorado is that one comes from New Mexico to Colorado side. I think the city of Trinidad, or, you know, with our, you know, if we're doing tourism and people wanna, everyone's taking pictures, that's what they're doing. Kids take pictures, tourists take pictures. I think like the city of Trinidad or the city of Trinidad Tourism Board should create something where it could have a picture of them to take like a main area of a picture. You know, for us to promote Trinidad and promote Trinidad, you know, promote our city, and I just don't think, you know, like a lot of people are always, you know, like I saw so many people carrying cameras this weekend, it was unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, they have like professional cameras like
I know.
these tourists did.
We
I'm
had
like,
a contest for
Yeah.
our initial book
Maybe we
for
could do that
pictures,
on
and
the
we
art
would
wall.
like to do
Yeah.
that again for the
Yeah, but
upcoming
it
book
would
that
be,
we're
I've
gonna
always
do.
thought it would be really cool to have some sort of thing that,
Like,
even if even if it was like Trinidad with name and other things, and
Yeah.
you stick your head in there and you take your picture, just
Oh,
so that people
is that what you're
start,
talking about?
just
Well-
something that people all want to take
Yeah.
a picture of and
Well-
then stop to go do.
Well, what I'm thinking is like, I went to this place and it was, I wanna say it was Frisco or Vail, I can't remember what it was, and what they did, they didn't have the exact same thing, but they had a really cool thing and it had the city above them, and then had this cool thing, you know, behind them.
Mhm.
And then everybody was, and it was the focal point of,
Right.
I mean, there was probably 30 tourists waiting in line to take this picture right there.
The most awesome picture is at the La Quinta. Trinidad,
Yeah.
you know, something like that, you know, to where you would have that in the background.
Yeah.
Even a Bat Masterson,
Right,
You know,
or Sister Blandina, Bat
Yeah.
Masterson, you know, in a row or something, just something that people wanna take their picture with.
Yeah, I just think like, I mean, social media and everybody's on cell phones. That's pretty much
Right.
what it's come to. I mean, I think that if we're gonna try and promote so much with Trinidad, I think we need to create something where they can promote Trinidad.
So with that thought, should we entertain, I'm sorry, Marty, go ahead.
I have had the discussion with Tom, about creating a facing the whole board for the Welcome Center. I have a lot of visitors that come through, the Welcome Center and want to take a picture. In the rest of the state, what the managers, and I discussed this with them, what they had in place, and they have the Welcome to Colorado sign that we actually have up on the pass. So, we were under construction this last summer and a lot of them couldn't stop to take that picture. But I've had the conversation with Tom to create a board to keep at the Welcome Center or put on a wall at the Welcome Center where they could do just that. They could take a picture and it says, "Welcome to Trinidad, Colorado."
Yeah.
And they would have that as our city advertising as well as state
And
advertising.
I'd recommend one for Welcome Center, one for downtown.
Yeah. And with that, where would you recommend that? If we walked into this and like actually did an RFP for requests for ideas for an advertising and marketing piece for downtown, where would you, how would we do that? Would that be a city building? Would it be back to the bathrooms and make them hardwood and put a signage on there?
I tell you what, it would look cool is on a building, a backdrop of a
Right.
building, or,
I think, I mean, we have some really cool buildings and I think we do it on a city building that the city owns, is what I would recommend for sure. But I think what I'm thinking would be cool is I think you do either, I'm trying to find a picture of it so you guys can see it, but is have a big butterfly put
Oh, yeah, I've
on the
seen that
wall.
one, yeah.
And then you put City of Trinidad above it, put the tourism board, you know, so they have a picture of it.
local.
And then what you do is you totally could stand in it, but it looks like you're weeds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that
Oh.
one. I've seen that one.
You know,
Yeah.
and you could have, you know, we have so many great artists, I think, you know, we can do a painting, we could do a metal piece, we could do something really cool, but it'll showcase, you know, Trinidad, Colorado, you know, and make it big. Like, I mean, in Vegas, there's so many different ones, but like, the one that I see in Vegas is they have that one big block, it says love on it, and everybody wants to take pictures in front of it, and it's the biggest thing you could think of, and there's just like so many people. I think that if we're trying to go artsy and we're trying to create stuff, I think we gotta create something that the tourists want to be.
And it'd be a signature piece of
It'd be a
Trinidad.
signature piece of Trinidad.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree with you.
one of our comedians this weekend did, I think, not knowing what he did,
He did an awesome
he
job.
created the
That video.
best, yes, Jay
Yeah.
Gillespie's,
Oh,
let
yeah.
me find it.
My little one
Yeah,
keeps
so-
singing it.
It's so,
Everybody's excited.
I
know.
love him. Did anybody see that on
Yes.
I did,
Facebook?
I did.
Yeah.
He even showed my
He's-
store.
He started here at the train.
He did
That's
it
right.
right, he
went
got
all
people
over
excited.
Trinidad.
He
He
got
showed
a
a lot
regular
of little
train, he
pieces.
went to the city hall, he went all over Trinidad.
Yeah.
And he was he was a terrific
He was our
comedian.
best salesman.
He was a
he
great
was,
guy.
let
Well,
me
that's
just
what
open it
that's
up
what I'm
here.
trying to say is I think like when we're promoting events and that's why I'm 100% on board like for new events because it brings new people and new
Oh, I'll tell you
ideas
what, he
to
made a great
town.
video.
And that was cool. I mean, like how much and what's cool if you look at the hits, it's over 1,500 hits on Facebook.
Yeah.
Phil, did you go to any of the events?
I was so wore out over the last week, I didn't get a chance to go.
Well, you missed a good time. Here is, but he goes through the whole town.
Yeah, no, I've seen it, I've seen a couple different ones, actually, Main Street.
He just went to different locations
They
with the
asked
lake.
they asked the
He just went all over and he just saying, you know,
and they
Trinidad,
have-
Trinidad, Trinidad, and he was just, I saw that and I thought,
That's exciting.
I want that guy to live here, move here, he was such a great, oh, yeah. Well, he did a really good promotion, it's on Facebook and everybody's sharing that.
Yeah,
video.
everybody's
He
sharing
just- The train, the lake, Simpson Rest, he went up there, he
Downtown
went
businesses.
downtown,
Yeah.
businesses, stood right in front of the stores and said, everybody.
But what's nice is that he did it on his own.
He
Like,
did
there
it
was
on
nothing
his
that,
own.
you know, when everyone, you know, that's what's so nice, it wasn't even Wally, it was.
It was him,
It was
a
him,
comedian,
yeah, that's
he was
what
a
cool.
comedian, and it was a great advertisement bit for Trinidad, it was.
And that makes us feel good about
Uh-huh.
how we spent the $10,000.
Exactly, that was the best $10,000 we spent.
That was, it was, we do need to get in that check right away, that worked
Well,
out.
speaking of checks, how are the checks coming along for the SoCo tourism?
That's all been taken care of.
Okay.
I came down and met with Marty and, Ms. Navarette, and I gave, Marty and her the form that I had filled out, and it was given to Flora Pachali, and then I think did it go to city council already, or is it this Tuesday?
On Tuesday.
It'll go,
Tuesday.
anything will go
And then
online.
everybody will be paid probably 20 days after that. But the one thing about the thing that we did for SoCo, I think that we need to get them amounts of money prior to the time we sponsor it. That way all these restaurants are paid the night that they actually do that, because Joey and Nancy could probably tell you, they probably did more than $100 worth of food for SoCo.
Your labor is that.
And I think when you go to a restaurant, you go to the counter, you pay your bill and you leave, and I think that's the way we should treat the restaurants that do this for us.
Well, and I think we would have more, restaurants if it was more money. Like, I really do, I mean, I just think that you're going into, I mean, it's great to do that event, but you're not making no money.
Right, and I think
You're
maybe
losing your money.
you and Nancy
Yeah,
could
you
come
guys
up
did
with
a
a,
fantastic
you and
job.
Nancy could come up with an amount that is fair to the
More, yes.
restaurateurs.
Yeah, cause I mean, like, even
You
Nicole,
know.
she had over probably $250 in
Yeah.
cookies out,
Right.
like, what do you do with those?
She lost money.
You lose
She
it.
lost, you guys lost money.
And-
You have to look at it as a contribution, but at the same time, it is your labor, your time away,
Right.
and the cost
Mhm.
of the food. It
So-
is not cheap.
So it appears that all checks that we cut, we have to be on time with, all checks for grants, all checks for anything.
Well, give people an understanding of when they do get their money. I think that is the thing. But as far as doing an event like for SoCo, I think the check has to be prior.
I think the best thing
to
to have,
that.
way to handle that is if somebody, I mean, we can go ahead and authorize buying the money, but let's say all of a sudden somebody didn't show up, so I think the night that they're there, then they give them the check.
And another thing, Marty has a
Right.
$1,200 stipend, even if it would have been taken out of that and then replenished.
Right.
I think in an instance like that, that's what should have been done, is
Good
that,
point.
that they should have had their money that night. We're already talking a month and a half or a month.
Almost 2 months.
So,
So it'll be
and I
3
think
months by the time
another
we get
thing
to
that I
that.
had heard was Coley's, they were gonna do something else, and she's just extended, and she
Well,
wasn't
as
able
a
to
new
do that.
business, and then, she's got a lot of expenses there with her equipment that she's purchased. She was going, Wally told me she was going to contribute, and then at the last minute, she said, no, I'm giving too much, and I gotta pull back,
Mhm.
so.
There's that, and then the other thing that I'd like to talk about is that the tourism fund, the sheet that Nancy and Tom came up with, make sure that this is the sheet that's used on a monthly basis to give us.
Yes, Marty, have you gotten with, Cheryl on this?
She's working on it right
She's
now.
working on it? Then that next board meeting, we should have
We
this
should
then?
have it.
And that would be all the updates of everything?
That's what I asked, that's what I requested of her, yes.
Alright. Did you want to see this, Nancy?
No, I have it.
Okay.
So before we end this meeting, with a review of grants of Santa Fe Trail Festival, that we're gonna talk about in our special meeting, is there anything you guys wanna do for them? Do you want to sort of educate them and say, like, we would fund X amount of dollars for advertising this more than 50 miles away or something, since they haven't done that in the past, so that we get people from out of town to come to town? What do you
I
think?
don't think so. I go with Joey. I think that they rethink their application. I think that they take into consideration the museums. I think that they take into consideration the anniversary of Santa Fe Trail. They can come back and reapply. Like Joey said, just because they were denied doesn't mean that we have to go back now and redo. That's my opinion.
My opinion is this, is if we give them money, we open a can of worms
That's right.
today for the other 5.
Well, they are saying that the paperwork was with Audra.
Well, that's not our responsibility.
Right, yeah, so, you know,
The
we
thing about it
have.
is you're looking at a hearsay, that's the issue that you have to.
True.
But
here's-
during the
here's-
grant round,
here's-
this wasn't in front of us.
That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
But my biggest thing is these other 5 grants, it's not fair to them. It's not fair to them at all. So that's what I'm going on,
And
what do we open by giving them this money?
they can always go back to the city as. you know,
That's my recommendation, that since Mr. Sun did say that they would get $10,000 if they moved back downtown, I think maybe he can talk to the city council and help them for this year.
Phil, with you being the liaison, what do you feel? You know, I mean, you had to have as many phone calls as we've all had.
I can understand your reasoning, you know, about denial. I'm listening to what are their, just backtrack a little bit. You were saying that there were 5 that were denied.
There's 5.
Now, some of them were denied because of history, right?
Most of them are denied because of, financial
Financials,
applications.
no one had financials.
And
That was the biggest
I
one.
think there's one in there that we denied because it was
A past event.
a past event, and it was, they wanted us to budget something for 2018. That was the Mitchell Museum. And I think on wasn't the Chamber, Historic Homes, didn't we?
The
have
ambassadors,
something?
Yeah.
We had, another reason for that one.
well, she didn't have enough houses lined up, you know, and
She
she.
didn't have a plan.
She didn't have it together.
Yeah,
For-
she was
for-
gonna
Well,
say,
here's the thing that you gotta look at too, you have 2, the 2 that I can see that were denied, where one was the Mitchell, correct?
Mhm.
And that was for how much?
Oh, that was for like, let's see.
You mean the historic home tour?
No.
No, for Mitchell.
Well, the Trinity Terror Fest and the Music and Lyric.
They
They just-
wanted $13,000,
Yeah.
and that was for us to fund something that was in 2018.
Well, I think that was a typo.
It wasn't, well,
They wanted it for 2019, but they put down 2018.
well, that's what I went on, is.
Yeah, so did
I went on it because it was, I think that.
That's a significant amount. Now, the $2,000 that the Chamber's looking for,
10,000.
10,000.
They want
I'm
10,000.
confused here, cause I understand that you're talking, the city was gonna give them 10,000 supposedly. I'm not sure if that's true, but is their application for 10,000?
Yes.
$10,000, yeah. It's right here. Their budget is $45,000, and, they're asking for $10,000. And I added up their ads for 2018, they did $3,002 with KCRT and, 1,130 with.
You know, if you wanna reconsider them, you know, maybe instead of giving them the 10, give them half for the reasons, you know.
But the point is, Mayor, it opens up a can of worms. Then everybody will want to come back, and it defeats our purpose, it defeats the process.
Here's where it comes back to bite us. I could read my financials. And I didn't know that the financials were downstairs. So what they're gonna say, who knows, who's to say they didn't bring them in yesterday?
And why were the financials with Audra instead of Marty?
So I mean, in January 2018, distance advertising we put $800, and then local advertising they have 2,085. So $2,800 at the most is what they've advertised.
yeah, they
Last
haven't,
year.
I don't think they've advertised correctly. I think that there's a lot, I mean, I don't think everybody else is gonna show back up and say Audrey had the financials, and so that's a little
If
bit
you
of a
add all
problem,
these
but
up, they're all the dates of last May and June.
Does it add up to that?
I think we could educate them by giving them a certain amount of money to advertise beyond 50 miles.
1,030 for the 5 years.
Madam Chairman, maybe we can go into another work session to discuss this.
Well,
We really can't do that because it's not posted.
Yeah.
You have to be.
So even on Joey's,
Uh-huh,
they don't match up
They don't even match
with
with
the number that they're given
right.
Right.
for.
I mean, that's why we asked
It's a
for these though.
loosely led organizational event.
I mean, what's gonna happen to us now? If we give them $5,000 and everybody else hears that the chamber came in and got $5,000 and we got nothing on the same merits that they're based on.
I think the big thing that I've heard from some of the council people is, you know, the chamber first, the Stampede Trail Days, it's been a long-standing event, I think that's, that's one of the things that
I totally agree with you.
But it's a money loser.
I totally agree with you that it's an event that's been here, and I would 100%.
I agree,
I would
and I
100%.
feel really bad, but my philosophy is, last year we asked them for financials, we never got them. The year before we asked for financials, we never got them. We begged them for them, yet we still gave them money. And I think it's got to come to a point that because we had so many grants that we really had to stick to these rules.
Well, and I think if it's been a long time event and it's a failing event, then
My heart
maybe the city should consider taking over this event to make it run right. I mean, like, in a way, I mean, that's how it's been, and it hasn't been a good event, it really hasn't.
Not for the
It's
last
dropped
few years.
$10,000 in 2 years
And I
in income. But it has, let's see here, Santa Fe Trail Festival. The expenses in 2016 were 24,000, then 22,000, then 10,000.
Yeah, and one of their problems for that is, because they took it out from downtown.
They
and
took it out
when
downtown,
had it
they
downtown, they made more
moved
money.
it to Central Park and
The reason why they did that, that was another total issue why they had to move downtown, because that's the time that they were doing the bypass over here. And this was considered a major throughway, major highway.
Emergency
So
route.
they have to move that out of downtown, and now that they've got the new highway, they're ready to move, that's the reason why they moved back in or back and forth on this. They do know that.
Yeah, it was nice.
I guess what it really boils down to is, what is your gut feeling? What is your gut feeling as to,
I mean, I see how the whole board feels. I would like to give them like a small amount to advertise outside of 50 miles. And if they place that ad, we would refund that money, as we've done in the past. I don't know what that amount is, but I think we have to educate them and let them know that we walked all the way through it, and maybe that's, you know, we'll refund up to $1,000 from any ads that are placed further than 50 miles, so that they don't do the Chronicle and working out with this money, but instead, you know, really go beyond. But,
Well, I
it's
think,
tough,
yeah, I think that will be
yeah, but
taken
that's,
up in the special
yeah,
meeting.
yeah, anyway. Anybody else wanna talk more about it?
No.
Okay, then we're gonna get out of this meeting and go into the next meeting. The meeting ends. Special meeting, call to order.
10:17.
Campbell,
here,
Kress,
Here.
Lackey,
Yes?
Salazar,
Here,
Michaels.
Yes. Okay, now we're gonna go through the grant process, whatever you guys want.
Well, I think we make a motion to accept all or deny all, or based on our past meeting, what we were going, we stand by our original votes.
I'll second that motion.
Can you reword that again, please?
I move to accept the past grant application fundings that were reviewed and accepted in our last work session, And I also move that we have educational sessions going forward for boards and directors to attend for education purposes on how to apply. That, I guess, is my motion.
And Tom, Tom
May
seconded?
I amend that, Marty?
Sure.
I believe that applicants that were denied revisit with another application with more detailed information.
And Tom, you second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and now we adjourn.
One other thing.
Uh-huh.
Has the letters been sent out to the applicants that did get received the funding?
I have not received that
There
directly.
were some sent out, what was sent
We
out?
sent out, the denial. I had asked Kim to send out the denial.
We need to send out the
We
ones
need
that,
to send out the.
Well, and they need their checks in order to get going.
Yes.
then that's already in process.
Those are in process, they will
And
be
if
reviewed
the
by
letter-
city council, and then they will be forwarded to financial department for processing. I don't know when for, we'll cut those checks.
If, just the amounts that they got, and if we have to relook at that thing of the KRDO, then it'll be, have to be given in money,
So
right?
I'm gonna send out letters to those that were approved,
Right.
right? And,
In that letter, Marty, I would suggest that expected funding would be received
We
by,
just have to relook at that next year.
I will find out from Flora before I say anything.
I think that's a good idea.
So my second question is, according to your motion then, Nancy, can those that were denied receive a letter of invitation to reapply?
Yes.
You know, have consideration, I just thought of this. If they want, cause I was looking at their financials and they do have some cash availability. That if they were to go ahead and use some of their own cash, and they show that for the next application, that they will get reimbursed. How would that fit in?
That's a good idea.
They're
Mayor.
entitled to that.
However, I think I can't get past the fact that this is our 200th anniversary of Santa Fe Trail, and it's not in the discussion. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for the Mitchell, who was also denied, and for the Historic Museum, and for the Chamber, to put combined efforts together
What a
for
blowout.
a
Yeah.
grand celebration in the fall.
It's too late for them to cancel it. I don't know, cause
They're
they've
not
already
asking
got stuff out
Yeah.
there.
Well, then perhaps they can still come together and do
A new
an
event.
application, a new event, in the fall.
That's a good idea too, Nancy.
Because it
Should
helps,
be
it's going to get the Mitchell involved, as well as the Chamber, Historic Museum, which, Kirby does a good job, she's a state-funded agency, but those three groups should be working together for this event.
There's also the scenic byways,
Yeah.
I just think that it's
Planned
such an
events.
historic event that
It is.
it should have really been a big thing.
Well, if you think that you would like for them to promote another fall event, being that you're the tourism group, I think that guys should put a letter together and send it to them, explaining those particular items.
Or have them come forward, I think, yes, an invitation. I think what tourism is in the position to do is to invite thinking processes to come forward and say, if a group has ABC type of event, what input can you give us as a tourism board to help us move forward? Because I think that let's just take Wally for instance. He moved to town, he's been here 7 months, and he put together a phenomenal.
Getting off track a little bit here, I'm going back to my original question
Yeah.
about the reimbursement, that's the question
Oh.
I'd like answered.
I do feel that they're entitled to, do a reapplication, you know, because.
Or reimbursement or something.
Yeah.
For,
I
you know,
agree.
That was my question.
I would look at that.
Mhm.
I
So you
I don't know
yeah.
about the rest.
In your
of the-
denial letter to them again, you know, you might put that in there.
Mhm.
Just as a precedent, we haven't funded events that have occurred in the past.
Yeah.
Here's the way I look at it in that sense. If they reapplied, now it doesn't put us in the predicament of the other 5 applicants.
Yeah, yeah.
And we moved forward today with a motion that we had voted on before, and it merits. You know, the financials were brought to us yesterday, but they should have been brought to us with the grant application. They probably would have received the full amount of the money, is the way I see it is. So, you know, because of the 200 years of Santa Fe Trail, and I just think that we're missing so many things, because for 200 years for the Santa Fe Trail, I think there's so many people that are so interested in that trail.
Mhm.
You know, and I think it should have been a big event.
And thinking about that, Tom, here is a perfect person to help us with a Western Heritage event that the Chamber could work with SCRT on, and that is Chris Miller, who was a tourism applicant, and he was the executive director, coordinator for the Palo Duro Canyon event in Amarillo. It was between Amarillo and Canyon, Texas, and it is like a mini version of the Grand Canyon. I've asked him if he would be interested in helping us with that kind of an event, and he is. He believes, and he has a lot of contacts and understands Western Heritage and how we can incorporate it here
And we're full of it.
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah, that's good.
So, Ms. Lackey, in your motion, you suggested having educational meetings. Does the board want to set a date for an educational meeting?
When is the dates for the
Before-
next grant round?
June 1st to June 30th?
That's what I thought, right.
Before these letters go
Sure.
out, that way they'll have a date when they can come
Sure,
in for this meeting?
absolutely, yes.
Well, maybe the 3rd week of March,
May, yeah, we'd
That's
have to
fine.
look at it, yeah, I agree, I think it's a great idea. And I can do that too, we can all do it, whichever ones. Before that period of time, I'd like to develop a front page sheet with some of the items that we talked about for them to
It's
check.
actually already done, I just haven't sent it out yet.
Oh, okay,
Uh,
well, let's look at it to see if there's anything that we need added
So
to
you
it.
will check your emails, and I will have that in there in your email probably by end of day tomorrow.
Did you get the last one I talked about, the process of when they would receive the check, what the process of that is? I would like that in the grant also.
Yeah, like a like a
That way,
if you were.
that way at the board meeting that we approve those, we have the workshop, the worksheet of the amounts and what they'll receive, and that can automatically be taken down the floor that day. And then put
Process
on,
for payment on the guidelines as well.
right, and I have it written down if you wanna see it. And then that way, we know that 20 days to 25 days after that, they'll receive their funding. If
The
that's,
third- The third week in May,
I'm
just guessing.
Yeah, I don't know,
I'm just
don't have
guessing,
the
Marty.
calendar.
are we still having a meeting on the 14th as
Yes, we-
regular schedule?
Mhm.
Yes,
And that's a regular meeting. Do you wanna have it on that day after the regular meeting or prior to the regular meeting?
yeah, I'll have to look at my
It
calendar.
depends on what's on
It's
the
on a
agenda.
Tuesday.
I'll have to-
There's probably 7 or 8 items on the agenda
June 14th,
from old business.
Are you?
No, May
I'm
14th.
gone.
May 14th.
May 14th, thank you. I'm here.
You have a
Which is
regular
next
meeting
week.
on the 14th and a work session on the 28th scheduled
Okay.
at this point, that I know
Well,
of. Should
we have 2 of our members that'll be gone next week. Let me, look at my calendar and see if we can
I'll
do it.
help you
Yeah,
with
okay.
it, but I don't think, if we have 7 items already on that agenda for that day, I don't think that would be a good day.
Just want to make one comment. You know, I'm sitting here listening and I understand and I know the predicament you guys are in. These are hard decisions to make. Sometimes they have to be made. I understand that, and I want you to know that. Because sitting on council and the decisions that we have to make are sometimes not pleasant. But they're difficult. And I applaud for all of your comments, and I understand where you guys are coming from, because as mayor, been there multiple times already. So,
And on that, Mayor, I believe that our endeavors to help existing events grow is for the best interest of Trinidad. It is not in any other way, shape, or form to be interpreted that we don't want to fund. But we don't want to fund what we don't know. We want to fund, and I would ask that groups start working together. SCRT, the museums, the chamber, they could put together some phenomenal events.
Well, that was the reason why I said, that. As a matter of fact, you know, the boards and commissions meeting that you guys have, I was the one that actually recommended that 2 years ago, to start coming together, and I think now would be the time to somebody to bring up the question, to bring up that question that you're talking about. How do we work together for, let's look at our events that we're planning, because those major events, you guys already know they know by the beginning of the year.
Right.
How can we all sit down together and work on, so we're not duplicating advertising, whether it's local or outside advertising.
Well, I don't know anything about that board and commission meeting.
The chairs meet,
Oh,
the chairs meet monthly.
But
And now-
the
Chamber is
chairs
not a
meet
city-
monthly, but they've kind
it's
of
not a
looked at the tourism board in the last they've only been doing this for maybe 4 meetings,
Right.
it's not happening
Yeah.
very long. They looked at how are they gonna spend this $150,000 split up between 12 months for everybody, but the boards have sort of looked at, well, the tourism board, you're there to give us input in our stuff, but you guys have money, none of us have money.
Yeah, I
well,
can see.
and that's the loophole, that's the void right now. And that is kind of, rather than calling it an incubator, if we have this group already formed, please come if we are considered the dispenser of funds, then we need to have them to our meeting, or a meeting.
Since that is
Yeah,
a city meeting though, would the chamber be invited to something like that?
Everybody's
Everybody.
invited, there's other
Hispanic-
people that show up.
Hispanic chambers.
Anybody.
Yeah,
Mitchell
Yeah.
Museum.
I just think what the city needs is a huge collaboration of what's going on with the events.
What I'll do is I'll recommend to Greg, because he's the one that I think chairs those meetings, and I'll recommend that they send out notice to, you know, the tourism board, the chambers,
Can I tell you guys one thing, this might be backtracking, when Tommy and I went to Vail for the tourism board meeting, Marty was there, me and Tommy were there, you were there. But in the other communities, you should have seen how many people were with their tourism board, Chamber of Commerce, they had council members there, they had so many, I mean, me and Tommy were by ourselves, but these groups came 7, 8, because they were working so well together between their chamber, the tourism board, and the city council. So they were all there listening to the ideas of what everybody's coming, and they were working so well together. We kind of felt lost. We really did, because we thought, where's our chamber of commerce? Because everybody had their chamber of commerce.
and there's a lot of
people there.
economic development.
And there was a
too.
lot of economic development people
Yeah.
there too. It was overwhelming just listening to these different towns, how they're working together, and we look at each other and say, we're not doing that in Trinidad.
Because
It was hard,
yeah.
it was hard, Phil. It was really hard for us to,
And
And,
in Colorado, especially in that meeting, it's hard to divide economic development for
Right.
tourism,
It was-
because in the state of Colorado, tourism is economic.
And I
development.
realized how important, maybe if these meetings, we have them in Trinidad, how important it is for us to work together. You know, we could start, we don't need to go to Vail or Denver on these meetings, we could start with ourselves and we'll start working together.
There-
Because when there is a meeting, then maybe we could go and get that grasp of it, but we do need to start.
Yeah.
You know,
There was again, a hearsay out there that, the money that the, city council put together for those numerous boards, I don't know, 12, 15 boards, was gonna disappear.
No,
Okay, yeah,
no, what it is we're allocating a certain dollar amount, and
Okay.
we're gonna approve some of that tomorrow night.
okay,
And the problem is that we were giving money out before, and some of it wasn't being used.
right.
You know, so what we wanna do is we're going to have those boards and commissions put a request for proposal back to council or to Greg,
Right.
so that we can
Right.
consider it, if it's for $5,000 or $500.
And that's exactly what we're doing.
Mhm.
That's exactly what we're doing. Put your application together and we'll see how it grades out, basically.
yeah.
Madam Chair, you missed the motion to adjourn.
Somebody motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Bye.
All in favor, aye.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, all of everybody.
Thank you.
We all work hard to make this work.